At 0917 on October 26, 1940, 3,000 meters above a gray Atlantic swell northwest of Ireland, Oberleutnant Bernhard Joop, 26 years old, a bomber pilot in Focke-Wulf Fw, leans forward in the cockpit of a four-engine aircraft that was never meant to be here. The Focke-Wulf Fw 200 Condor beneath him began life as a civilian airliner. Now it carries bombs, a radio set, and the orders to find Britain's lifeline and cut it. The sea is empty until it isn't. At 0923, the navigator calls a smudge on the horizon, a ship, then another. Joop holds course and throttles back, closing carefully. The Condor is large, too large, its airframe built for range and passengers, not evasive maneuvers or flak. Allied crews will later call it an obsolete conversion, a stopgap aircraft, fragile in combat. But in late 1940, over the mid-Atlantic approaches, fragility matters less than reach. At 0931, the target resolves into a giant liner moving without escort cover that can reach this far. The RMS Empress of Britain, over 42,000 gross register tons, rides high, fast, and confident in open water. The Condor's advantage is not armor or speed, it is distance. From bases in occupied France, these aircraft can fly deep into a gap where Allied fighters cannot patrol and where convoy escorts are spread thin. The job is simple: locate, shadow, strike, and report. At 0938, Joop begins his attack run. The Fw 200 standard maritime load is limited, about 1,000 kilograms of bombs or mines, and its bomb sight is crude compared to purpose-built level bombers. So Condor crews learn a brutal method: low-altitude bracketing. They descend toward the sea, line up the ship's length, and drop multiple bombs in a pattern designed to guarantee at least one hit. It is not elegant, it is repeatable. At 0944, the Condor levels out for the run. The liner's lookouts finally spot the aircraft. Light anti-aircraft fire begins, small flashes, scattered and late. Joop does not dogfight. He cannot. If a fighter arrives, the Condor dies. He commits to a straight approach anyway, because the ship is too valuable and the Atlantic is too wide to let it go. At 0947, the first bombs fall. Seconds later, spray erupts alongside the liner. Another detonation follows, closer. The Condor roars past the masthead line and climbs shallowly, its crew turning to watch. The ship's wake breaks unevenly now. Smoke begins to rise. The airliner turned bomber has done what it was built to do in this new war: take a civilian airframe, add a bomb rack and radio, and turn range into a weapon.
At 9:52, Joop's flight engineer reports fuel and engine temperatures steady. The Condor has no reason to loiter. Its wings were designed to carry passengers, not repeated high-G turns. The aircraft is heavy, the structure unforgiving. Even mild flak bursts can sever control cables or puncture fuel lines. So the crew does what KG-40 crews are trained to do in 1940. Confirm damage, transmit, leave. At 9:54, the radio operator keys the set and sends the contact report: ship type, course, speed, approximate position. It is a simple message with an outsized effect. In the Battle of the Atlantic, the most lethal weapon is often not a bomb, but information. A single aircraft that can search hundreds of miles of ocean turns a random hunt into a guided strike. At 10:03, the Condor climbs to a safer altitude and turns south toward France. Behind them, the liner continues steaming, but now with smoke and fires to manage. The Condor's bombs are only the first act. The second act is the follow-on attack. U-boats vectored in by the aircraft's sighting report, moving into position for torpedoes after nightfall. By 11:38, the crew is over cloud layers and dead reckoning back toward the Bay of Biscay. The navigator marks the track line on the chart. The numbers matter. A Condor can fly long hours, operating far beyond the practical reach of RAF fighters in 1940. That gap, Hundreds of miles of open water where there is no air cover becomes a hunting ground. In that gap, a single FW-200 can shadow a convoy for hours, updating bearings and speeds, keeping the U-boats on the line of approach. This is why the Allied officers begin to treat the Condor as more than a nuisance. On paper, it is an awkward conversion. Its defensive guns, light machine guns in dorsal and beam positions, are not enough against a determined fighter. Its speed is modest. Its wings can fail if the aircraft dives too hard. But it does not need to win an air battle. It needs to appear where the Allies cannot, and then persist. On November 3rd and again on November 8th, KG-40 aircraft repeat the pattern. Lone merchantmen, stragglers, and high-value liners hit by bombs or guided into the path of submarines. The early Atlantic War is a logistics contest measured in tonnage and days at sea. Every ship sunk is not just steel lost, it is cargo that never reaches Britain. Aviation fuel, wheat, ammunition, spare parts. Every delayed convoy forces hard choices in London and Ottawa about routing, escort allocation, and shipbuilding priorities. By January 1941, the Condor has earned a reputation among merchant crews that is blunt and practical. When a four-engine silhouette appears at low altitude, it is not obsolete. It is a signal that they are alone. And the Allies begin to adapt because they have to. At 6:12 on March 28, 1941, a westbound convoy forms up in the North Atlantic under low cloud. The escorts, corvettes and destroyers, can fight submarines close in, but they cannot stop what happens beyond the horizon. The mid-Atlantic air gap is still real. Shore-based fighters cannot reach it. Coastal command patrols are stretched, and that is where the Condor keeps appearing, not to win a duel, but to turn the ocean into a map for the U-boats. At 8:41, a lookout on a merchantman reports an aircraft, 4 engines, long wings, glinting in the thin sun. The convoy's reaction is immediate and drilled. Ships tighten station. Gunners man 20mm and .303 mounts. Smoke floats in patches as some captains try to obscure the convoy's outline. None of it solves the core problem. The Condor's best weapon is its radio, and it can stay out of range while it talks. By 9:17, the aircraft is circling wide. It does not dive in yet, it watches. It marks bearings. It measures speed by the convoy's wake and relative movement. If it has bombs, it may try a low-level attack on a straggler. If it does not, it stays high and transmits. Either way, the convoy commander knows what this means. A submarine pack could be forming 40, 60, 100 miles away, shaping the intercept. The Allies respond in layers, and each layer is practical. First comes the concept of getting a fighter into the gap, any fighter, long enough to break the shadowing. The solution is improvised and dangerous, the cam ship, a merchant vessel fitted with a catapult and a single hurricane. It cannot recover the aircraft. The pilot launches, attacks, then bails out or ditches and hopes to be picked up. It is a brutal trade. One fighter sortie for one denied shadow. But in 1941, that can be worth a convoy. When a Condor sees a cam ship's catapult rail, it has to respect it. Second comes longer-range patrol aviation. Coastal Command pushes aircraft that can actually reach the gap, 4-engine bombers adapted for maritime work. The principle is simple. If the Condor is fragile, force it to fight on your terms. A patrol aircraft with radar can find it. A fighter with enough range can kill it. The Condor's wing structure and lack of armor mean that concentrated fire from a single fighter pass can be decisive. Even without a fighter, persistent patrols reduce the Condor's freedom to loiter and transmit. Third comes technology, air-to-surface radar, better radio direction finding, and coordinated convoy reporting. The Atlantic becomes less blind. The Condor's advantage, finding ships first, shrinks each month the Allies refine detection and escort coverage.
By late 1941 into 1942, escort carriers begin to appear in the convoy system, putting multiple fighters overhead for days at a time. That changes the geometry completely. A Condor that once roamed alone now risks interception the moment it closes. At 10:26, the Condor over the March convoy turns away rather than commit. It has seen enough. The Allies are learning to punish the shadowing aircraft, not just endure it. For KG-40 crews, the war shifts from easy hunts against unescorted targets to a contest of minutes. How fast can they spot, report, and escape before a fighter is launched? The aircraft that wasn't meant for war is still dangerous, but now it is being hunted.
At 14:06, on February 12, 1942, a Condor crew from KG-40 taxis out on a wet French airfield with a new piece of equipment bolted into the aircraft's routine: search radar. The FW-200C4 begins arriving with FUG-200 Hohentiel sets, low UHF maritime radar designed to find surface ships through haze and darkness, tightening the Condor's search pattern and reducing wasted fuel on empty ocean legs. At 16:22, out over the Atlantic, the radar operator's display jumps, faint returns in a wide arc. In 1940, a Condor had to spot a convoy with eyeballs and luck. In 1942, luck matters less. But now the Allied response is arriving just as fast. Escort carriers begin to cover convoys for days at a time. CAM ships, merchantmen with a one-use fighter catapult, are already in service as a harsh stopgap. Launch a hurricane, drive the Condor off, then ditch. It is not a sustainable system, but it buys time, and time is the currency of the Atlantic War. By 1940, the Condor's shadowing one turns into a clock. Every minute the aircraft stays near a convoy increases the chance an escort carrier fighter is launched, or that the convoy's gunners range in, or that a patrol aircraft arrives with radar of its own. KG-40's own instructions shift: avoid combat, preserve aircraft, report contacts, feed wolfpacks. The Condor is still useful, but increasingly as a scout rather than an executioner. This is where the title's claim, "nearly won the Atlantic War," finds its real meaning. The Condor never sank Britain by itself. What it nearly did in the early phase was make the U-boat campaign smarter: fewer blind searches, more guided interceptions, more convoys attacked at their weakest point in the air gap. When that advantage is stripped away by fighters at sea, by radar, by expanded patrol coverage, the Condor becomes what it always was underneath: a large airliner airframe asked to fight a modern air war. For Bernhard Jope, that change is personal. The pilot who became famous for striking the RMS Empress of Britain on October 26, 1940, earning major recognition and a rapid rise, does not stay frozen in that first Condor era. In 1943 and 1944, he is no longer just a maritime raider. He moves into higher command in bomber units, including leadership roles tied to Germany's precision-guided weapons campaign, the era of radio-guided glide bombs and standoff attacks. After 1945, the uniform disappears. Jope returns to aviation the only way Germany can: civilian flying. He works as a Lufthansa pilot until retirement, trading combat reports and shadow runs for schedules and passenger manifests. He dies in 1995, a long life after a short, intense war. The Condor's legacy is not a victory, but a lesson written into doctrine. Ocean war is won by information, range, and coverage. Today, one complete reconstructed FW-200 exists, rebuilt from a wreck raised from Trondheim Fjord and assembled for display at Berlin's former Tempelhof Airport, an airliner that once turned the Atlantic into a kill chain.